Welcome back to this latest episode of Japan's Top Business Interviews. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Story, President of Dale Carnegie Tokyo Training, and my special guest today is Tae Ho Kim, who is the President of enworld Japan. Great pleasure to meet with you. And
yes.
you've had a long career in leading in Japan. So walk us back a little bit through how you got to have this job and some of the things you've been doing in Japan.
Okay. Well, I first started my career with American Express. And very quickly I made enough noise to say I want to go to New York headquarters.
So you started in Japan?
I started in Japan, and all the executives came over and said how we're global companies. I said, well, if you're global, then let me go work in the headquarters. And so I became the first one to move across divisions to go to the U.S. I saw how...
Why was that? I mean, many Japanese or people working in Japan, put it that way, very happy to stay here. Food's great, no crime, no graffiti, no drugs, no guns. You know, it's all pretty good here. They're happy to spend the whole life in Japan. They don't want to go out. But something was inside you that said, well, I want to see a bigger world. What was that?
At the time, the president or COO of American Express, Lou Gerstner, who, as you probably know, later became president and CEO of other companies, became the CEO of RGR Nabisco, one of the largest M&A at the time. And as a youngster in my mid-20s, I could not understand how somebody selling traveler's checks and credit cards can become a CEO selling biscuits and tobaccos and cigarettes. So that kind of mesmerized me. And then later on, he, of course, moved to IBM, now selling computers after selling biscuits. So I said to myself, I want to be like that. I want to be a professional manager, because it looks like if you're a professional manager, it doesn't matter where you work. But in order to be a professional manager, you have to be where the decisions are made. And staying in Japan, lots of the major decisions seem to be made over there across the ocean.
Yeah.
And that kind of prompted me to say, well, I want to go over there.
Were you educated in Japan before that? Did you go to uni here? And
Actually, I was educated in international school, but went to U.S. for high school and college.
Oh, okay. Which international school were you with here?
St. Mary's.
That's my son. Went to St. Mary's too,
Okay.
so I know that pretty well. So that was probably a good grounding, and your English was excellent, of course. And so you get to the States and you get that experience. So how long are you in the States?
I was in New York for 3 years.
Right. Okay.
Then they wanted me back in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to be back in Japan because I started in finance. I moved over there in finance. Then I wanted to be there where I earned the revenues.
Right.
And staying in what they call the Ivory Tower in New York, doing financial analysis or doing whatever bookkeeping wasn't going to really get me closer to revenue. So I wanted to go back to where the market in action is. So when they gave me the offer to come back, I said, sure, I took it. So I came back here. But
So what was your role back here?
I headed up a new service called Consulting Services, which then quickly changed to doing marketing and sales.
So before you went to New York, you were basically, I guess, one of the producers in the company. You probably weren't running a big division or a big section at that point. So you go to the States, you come back. Now they've put you in charge of other people. Would that be right? Or are you recruiting people for that new section? How did that work?
Well, it was a new section, yes, and I had to recruit it.
You had to go and get people internally, right?
Internally, yes.
Right, so this is probably your first experience of actually leading a team. So what was challenging about that?
Well, first of all, that particular job, it was a new function in Japan. So not that many people knew about what the function is supposed to do.
So does that make it hard to recruit people?
Oh, yes.
I'm not too sure about this. What is this?
I don't know what it is, but hey, you want to come work for me?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that was hard, but it looked exciting.
Right.
Consulting at the time in Japan, I don't know if you were aware, but consultanto was not very respected upon.
No. And people don't want to pay for it either.
No, they would obviously be very happy to get free consulting, but they didn't want to pay. So it was a little bit difficult to get that moving along. But
What about the actual leading the people? What was challenging about that part of the leading part?
Well, it was a little bit different from my later experiences where I deal with Japanese, more Japanese, because the Japanese at American Express was like any Japanese in the other foreign multinationals. They do embrace change. They do go for more challenges. They are more result oriented. So it wasn't that difficult to gain the people, but it was very difficult to have them understand that they are supposed to lead their own function. They are supposed to not wait for instructions. They are supposed to, because it's a unknown, uncharted area.
No roadmap.
No roadmap, which means we got to write one.
We're making it.
Yeah. And I think people aren't used to that, whether you're Japanese or not. And particularly if you're Japanese, much more comfortable being told what to do and then doing an excellent job in what they're being told to do.
And so how long were you in that role?
About 2 years.
2 years, right? And then what happens then?
Then from that consulting services came this need for new product development. So I headed new product development within the corporate services, the corporate card area. That's where I came back, not the consumer card.
And this is more of mainstream part of the business, I guess.
Around that time, it became. Before it was consumer card.
A new thing at that time, was
corporate card became the most profitable arm within American Express, what they call the travel-related services, which is not the banks, not the securities, but the card, travel, and travel checks. So the president, international president at the time said, we got to grow corporate card. One of the ways to grow that would be these consulting services and the new product developments. So that's what we did.
So you inherited an existing team this time. The first chance you had, you recruited a team, and now you're getting an existing team?
No, it was also a new team.
Oh, again, I had to recruit another team.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of transform the old one into a new one.
Right, okay. And is it a larger scale now? Is your scope of work larger, a number of people larger?
Yeah, that was about, about 18 people.
Right, so you've gone from probably a small team to quite a reasonable sized team. Was anything challenging, particularly in terms of scaling that up?
Well, first of all, I didn't know enough people within the company that, again, this was a new area. You don't generally do new products in a particular country. For a company as big as American Express, it's usually sort of centralized.
Right.
So new services, new products have a lot of obstacles, and that was quite difficult, not just internally, but externally, because we're in the financial area. The first time actually that I understood why new services are not introduced in Japan by foreign companies, because they take that idea and then they kind of throw it into all the existing Japanese competitors and say, hey, we want to know that it's viable service. That's the official claim. But by doing so, they actually show what we were trying to do to all our competitors.
That's not good.
That's not good.
That's not good. So in terms of leading that expanded team, I mean, probably by this time you've got someone, maybe two people who are below you as leaders as well, like they're I don't know, section head or something like that. So you're
managers,
managers, right. So now you're managing through managers as opposed to necessarily running a small team. It's direct. So was there anything challenging about managing through managers when you first started doing it?
If I may kind of go back, when I came back to Japan, I was 29 and I was the youngest director, at least in American Express Japan, because directors were supervisors, managers, directors. Directors were generally in their 50s.
Wow, you're 29.
Late 40s, early 50s, at least in Japan.
Right.
So that by itself, age by itself, I'm sure you know that it's a big hurdle when you are young in Japan.
Yeah.
And and your subordinates are more than 10 years older than you are.
Yes, exactly.
And so that was probably my biggest challenge, to try to have to prove myself that I can lead.
How do you prove that? Because, you know, for these older gentlemen, okay, you went to the States for 3 years, big deal. So you know everything now. We've been here for a long time. Who do you think you are? I can imagine that wouldn't have been so easy.
No.
So how did you overcome that?
Well, I've made a lot of mistakes, to be upfront. I could have done something
What were
better.
some of the mistakes you made?
Well, I tried to be somebody I'm not. I tried to be more Japanese. I tried to be humble. I tried to be much more of a listener than a leader. Asking for input all the time, trying to show that I actually care about their input, their opinions. In hindsight, I could have did it a lot more simpler. And I got that in my 360 feedback.
Oh,
This is,
that you're too consultative.
yes.
They wanted more direction.
I was being too sensitive. I was being too kizukai, kinshisugi. So I said, oh, okay. I think I now have the freedom to
Be more
be more, to be myself a
assertive
bit
and
more.
directive, yeah.
Yeah, be directive, and then it kind of, the pendulum probably swung too much
The other way.
at the time. And again, I made mistakes there, being too directive,
Right.
too, should I say, confident, overconfident. Yes. So, yeah, I learned my lessons there as well.
Well, this is where you learn them, isn't it? Your
Yeah.
first outing as a leader. And so from that position, what was the next position you went to?
From there, I did the head of business travel. So that was the first time I actually had a P&L.
This is a national role, I guess?
Yes, in
So
Japan.
all Japan.
All Japan, business travel.
And you've got a P&L now.
I have a P&L, I have top line and the bottom line.
How many people we got?
It was about 80 people.
So now we go from 18 to 80. That's a big jump, isn't it?
Yeah, but I guess the bigger jump is that the business was losing money
Oh,
and I had to turn it around.
okay.
So that was the first time I got engaged in or involved in business turnaround.
Right.
So
And what did that mean in terms of leading the team? Because they're working in a loss-making business. They think they're doing a good job. They think they're working hard, but it's not making any money. So you've got to make some tough calls, some tough choices. And had you sort of become less directive by that time, or were you still in that highly directive phase and sort of bulldozing your way through to fix it, or how did you approach it?
Well, it was a very different crowd of people now that I dealt with. Young people, much younger than the ones I used to be working with. Many women who like travel. The travel industry at the time had a lot of perks for people within the industry, and that's the kind of people they attracted.
Right.
So people that love going to Hawaii for a week or whatever. And they were in the travel business because they thought they can get all those perks. And all these other things that were supposed to be the norm within the industry didn't quite work for business travel because we were trying to change the model into a profitable one. So yes, so the toughest challenge there was actually changing the mindset of people from saying they were being told and trained, do everything possible to make your customer happy, to, okay, let's focus on what we want to do everything possible about, and choosing certain things that we're not going to do, which upset a lot of people. Because
It's very hard gauge, isn't it? Because the Japanese service culture mentality seems to have like one calibration, and that's on max.
Yes.
All the time, you know, they have to do everything the customer wants, everything they say, that's it. And trying to turn that dial back a bit, not that easy. So how did you go about dialing it back a bit to still have a customer happy but make money as well?
So first I had to convince them that we need to do this. So, you know, we were part of the total global business travel organization. Our top line revenues was about 2% of the global business travel business, and our bottom line, we actually pulled down the the global profit by 10%.
You pulled it down?
Yeah, because we were losing money.
Oh.
So I told my people, you know, if I was the head of business travel, what do you think I would say? You know, if I shut down Japan,
Yeah.
I only lose 2% in top line
Yeah.
and actually gain 10% in revenue. So,
Yeah.
well, what is there to stop me from doing that?
Exactly, yeah.
And I said, the only thing that's going to stop me from doing that is if I think that these guys are going to turn it around and make it into a fun business with a lot of future. And I took the logical approach of, it was new at the time, called activity-based costing.
Okay.
Typical way of looking at P&L is you look at the expenses,
Yeah.
right? So of course, you know, personal expenses, you know, real estate, those are usually the big ones, and
Yeah.
people attack the big ones, and that's
People
why
and rent.
people and rent.
Yeah.
Now we said, okay, that's not the approach. Activity-based costing is okay for every time I make a reservation, how much does that cost? Every time I ticket an airplane ticket, how much does that cost? And all these interesting costing. Every time I get a refund, how much does that cost? Or cancel. So
How are you calculating that? Are you doing just a basic calculation of the people involved, their salaries, a sort of fixed cost number, and then working it on an hourly basis, or how do you calculate that?
There's actually a certain expertise in doing this, and so we needed a consultant to get this done.
Right.
But you have to kind of take apart all your costs and remap it by activity. So you have to actually time the people for about a month. Everything they're doing, you know, inputting something or writing something or calling somebody. You just have to put everything down and then reshuffle it and say, okay, how much time do I spend on this and that? And then you put the average cost against those things.
And with this is average cost of salary,
Salaries, or if it's
insurances,
something that
plus-
actually occupies a place, then you know a piece of the rent goes there.
Okay, so you're really breaking it right down.
Oh, yeah, if something taking the
He's got a pencil.
mainframe, then the system part goes there.
2 pencils over here, 1 pencil over here.
Oh, yeah, very detailed.
Wow, that's
very
amazing.
detailed.
That's
But
amazing.
then once you get it done,
Yeah.
you then find out all these things that we never knew about.
Right,
You know, how much it costs to cancel something.
right.
Of course, canceling something doesn't add value at all to the company, nor to the customer. Or how much it takes to send a ticket, or a Shinkansen ticket, which we only make 500 yen in commission. It costs us 750 yen to send it over. Those things.
This is not helping.
Those things will then be a bit more convincing to tell people, well, shouldn't we stop doing these things? Shouldn't we minimize things? So don't issue a ticket until the last minute so that we don't have to reverse that by doing credits and cancellations. So it doesn't mean we're going to lower the quality of service. It just means we're going to do things a little bit more smarter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people got that, obviously.
People got that.
They understand. I mean, your idea of, well, we're going to just do 8% better here, we're getting rid of all of us, is a fairly convincing argument, isn't it? We should do something different. Yeah.
And we turned it around in 2 years. So we finally became a non-money losing operation, at which time I decided to take my first move out of American Express.
So you left the company then?
Yeah, I left the company.
Right.
Yeah.
So where did you go?
I went to this company called Shinwa. It is a manufacturer of what we call the mechanisms. It's the part that turns the cassette decks and CD and floppy disks around. Highly automotive related, but a little bit of computers. I moved there because I decided I want to go to a company where I get as close as possible to the final decision maker. And that's the best way for me to become trained as the professional manager. And being in a large company, I really appreciate American Express. They gave me a lot of opportunities, but being in a large multinational company as big as American Express isn't going to get me close to where all the really important corporate-wide decisions are being made. So I decided to go to a little smaller scale company, closer to the CEO, reporting directly to the CEO.
And this is, I'm sure, a very Japanese-style company.
Yes, it was.
So that's a big contrast. You've had, you know,
And that was my biggest move, actually.
yeah, that's a jump, isn't it?
It was my biggest jump. It was a very difficult one, but it was worth it. I moved from a financial industry, more services, to a manufacturer,
To a maker, yeah.
American company to a purely Japanese company.
And what about the team? You know, you turn up. What was your job in that new company?
Well, I first started as the group strategic center.
Right. So now you're in the strategy component.
Strategy part.
Which is always a little bit of a sort of off the mainstream, isn't it? Like the manufacturing, engineering components tend to be where all of the core business is done and where people tend to rise through the ranks. And that strategy section always like sort of an add-on, isn't it? So what did you find there? Did you find yourself that group was sort of thought to be a little bit off from the mainstream, or was it part of the mainstream of that company?
No, it wasn't, because the main reason why the CEO hired me was to groom me as his successor.
Okay.
And he actually made that announcement in the BOD when they had to approve my hiring.
Oh.
So
this is from the very start.
the
People
board
knew.
of directors actually knew why
Right.
I came in. I didn't know that, but they knew that I was groomed as his successor,
Right.
and therefore he, the CEO, first put me in a spot where I had to kind of see all the businesses and the locations in China and in Hungary at the time. There was Nihon, and try to understand where to move the company into. And then very quickly we got this very big contract from Delphi Automotive in the US, and at the time we had to then move from one of the suppliers exporting products from China to within the NAFTA area, which is North America, so it had to be in Mexico. So we had to build a plant from scratch, get the automotive accreditation, QS 9000 at the time, and do everything to become an automotive supplier, major supplier, doing 4.2 million out of their 6 million North American automobiles, which then really put us into a strategic supplier. So that was an experience. Knowing nothing about manufacturing, going to a company where I don't speak the language. I never was in a situation where I couldn't communicate. Now I'm dealing with a lot of Mexicans, and
so they sent you down to Mexico to open
well,
it up.
I had to, yeah. I
They said,
became
"You
the new
speak
president
English."
of North America.
You speak English, you go. Is that how that decision's made, I guess?
Well, actually, we purchased a company that was doing certain quality checks for us because we needed a management team.
Yes.
We couldn't groom it quickly enough, so we did an M&A, and we used them, the managers there, as the management team. But as happens probably fairly often, if you are a business owner, you set up your own business and then you sell it, you don't really want to stick around being part of a larger corporation. So the owner left after about a year.
Oh, yeah.
And there was nobody guiding that place, so they said, you go.
You go.
Yeah.
That must have been an unbelievable experience.
It was.
So now you've gone from managing Japanese to managing a Mexican team.
And Americans, yes.
And Americans, so that's just totally different. And how many years were you there for that?
I was there for about 2.5 years. 2.5 years, yeah.
And then do you come back and take over as the president? Did that
No,
happen? It didn't work out?
I left.
You left. The plan has gone a bit taken a right turn here.
Yeah, it was probably the biggest failure of my life, but also gave me the biggest lesson of my life.
Why is that?
Yeah, because
What was
I
the
burned
lesson?
the bridges with the people, with the Japanese management, and I could not get their cooperation.
So let's roll that back a bit. You've been sent off to Mexico to get this thing up
So
and running.
before I went there,
Before that.
Before I went there, I was heading this new strategy
thing,
and,
right?
and throwing all these numbers around and saying all the should-be scenarios, not knowing how difficult they are, or not paying any attention to what the desk level people are struggling with.
what the engineers are going to have
what
to
the
do.
engineers are going to have to go through because I don't really understand manufacturing. I kind of throw all this stuff around. Of course, the existing manager is not going to really buy that, nor do they welcome some youngster in their mid 30s coming in, walking around saying, I know how to run your business. I could have done it much differently, getting their buy-ins and taking a stance of can you teach me about manufacturing, which I did not take. So they didn't like me, but because the CEO brought this guy, you had to kind of work with this guy. And now this guy's off to the U.S. So great. Yeah,
that was good.
Yeah, good riddance. So this guy wants spare parts and stuff. Don't ship it to him. This guy wants because we were assembly plant. We have to buy all the parts from Japan. Japan and China, and Hong Kong managed that. Number 2 guy was in Hong Kong. He didn't like me, so because it looked like his position was being threatened. So he won't give me the parts in time, or he won't give it to me in the price that we agreed upon. So I cannot make profit. I cannot get my line up in time, and we're dangerously close to stopping the customer's line, which is a big no-no in the automotive area. And the CEO found that out a little bit later, but at the time he thought that I was not doing the right job, and I probably wasn't, but it wasn't just my part of the problem. And after I quit, he found out that his people were actually not
sabotaging you.
Well, actually sabotaging.
Sabotaging the whole project, not
project,
just you, the whole
which is
project.
the corporation's project. So so he kind of felt bad and asked me to come back. But either way, I caused it, and I figured that out. I caused it. It didn't have to be that way.
It could have gone a different way.
Yes, and I made them disrupt the operation in the company. So that was a big lesson that I learned. You have to get people to work with you, and you have to mobilize the organization to get big things done. And no matter how smart you are, which I'm not, or no matter how committed.
Or how smart we think we are.
Yeah, we think we are.
Or how
no matter how committed
we
are. You cannot move big projects without the help of of the other departments, other people. So that was a big. And
we're going to call this your warring states period.
Yes. Okay. But I still wanted to learn. Yeah, I joined that company because I wanted to learn and train myself to be a professional manager. And it didn't really happen, but in a way I wanted it to be. So I wanted to continue. So I went to Misumi. Misumi.
Misumi. Okay.
Okay. The CEO at the time was a little bit famous person. He wrote books, which became one of the bestsellers in Japan.
Now, Misumi, they're making food product, is it? No. I'm mixing up something. What does Misumi make?
Lots of industrial parts, components.
Industrial parts. Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's something else.
Tooling parts.
Okay.
Factory automation parts.
Right. So again, we're back into manufacturing.
Manufacturing, but this is sort of a fabless manufacturer. They don't really have any manufacturing sites. They had about 300 companies that they work with, but
right. So the subcontractors are doing all the actual production.
Right. But they design the products and they sell it under their name. So as far as the customer is concerned, they're manufacturing.
Yeah. Right. Gotcha.
But so this Saegusa, Mr. Saegusa, he went there to groom what he called the Keisha, so Kei Jinzai, so management, professional managers. I met him. He had lots to say about what could happen. I thought I could learn a lot there, so I went there. And the way he picked people was just get somebody in, again, put them in a planning, strategic place, do a little project, get groomed up, get used to what the company's doing, and then go be responsible for one area. So my predecessor took the molding, and then the next guy took the new China project, and then I was the third one after he became CEO, and I took over the tooling business. Not the tooling as in the die and mold, but the tools.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're dealing with the subcontractors who are producing the tools,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
So what was your approach this time? You sort of felt, okay, I probably could have taken a different path last time. Been through that, okay, now I've got a better idea what I need to do. And what was the thing I need to do this time? What was the thing you thought, well, okay, here's my little game plan that's going to work this time?
So the first thing I was forced to face with was that I could not develop a strategy for my prior company. I thought I knew stuff about strategy, but if you're in an entirely different industry and you don't understand the business, you don't even understand how your products are being made, it is so difficult to come up with a strategy. So I could not come up with that. The second piece was, like I said earlier, I need to know how to mobilize people. Those two things I felt were really necessary for me to become, professional manager. And I went in there, and those were the two highlights or main themes.
So the consulting component is probably frameworks. It's probably tried and true mechanisms that probably work in a number of places. So you can sort of learn that. But the mobilising the people part, I would imagine that's the harder part.
Yes.
What did you find worked well to mobilise the people?
Well, there are a lot of listening now. I did a lot of listening. I tried to understand the differences of opinions, the differences between the cultures, the differences between the values, trying to find the common denominator, trying to understand what it is that, first of all, I don't have as an experience or as an expertise. How do I fill that? And then I can now come with an organization structure that I think has all the necessary parts in there, versus thinking that I can somehow try to do all of it. So facing what you don't know, but is necessary for success, was a big first step that I did. We went from a 20 people to like a 60 people organization. Our business pretty much tripled in 5 years, and our profitability like quintupled.
Nice.
It was nice, and
Nice.
I saw how when people get really motivated, how they just work like horses. When you keep telling them to take days off, they just won't, because they're just so motivated and committed, and they'll keep coming in on weekends. And I go to weekends just to tell them to go home.
Right. But it's a funny thing about Japan. I mean, I have the same problem in my team. They get 20 days a year, and they don't take any. And then you look at the, how many leave days? They've got like 39 leave days or something, and then they lose those days.
They lose those days.
Over a 2-year period. And I keep telling them, you take your leave, you've got to, refresh, get out there. But that mindset of, no, I have to be committed working. Yeah. So it's sort of ironic that you've got to work hard to get people to take a day off. I always find that a bit unusual. But anyway, Aussies don't have any trouble in that regard. We've probably mastered the day off. I think we're pretty good on that. If you want to be successful as a leader, do the Leadership Training for Managers course. All companies need people who can both manage and lead. Leading people screams out for real skills in communication, dealing with all different types of people, being excellent at innovation, planning, delegation, handling mistakes, doing performance reviews really well, and inspiring and motivating the team. Do the Leadership Training for Managers course now in either Japanese or English. Are you doing business with Japan? Do you really know how things work? Japan Business Mastery provides the answers. Do you have the right networks and know how to create them? Do you know how to get on the same wavelength with Japanese buyers? Do you know what being trustworthy looks like from the Japanese perspective? Japan Business Mastery is based on more than 30 years' experience in Japan and will become your go-to guide. Want to succeed in Japan? Buy Japan Business Mastery now. So how many years are you in the company?
7 years.
And then what happens after that?
And then I thought, okay, I think I now am done going through the training part.
Right.
So now I'm going to go try to see how I can implement that.
Mm-hmm.
So the past two companies, I did not choose the products or services. I
Mm.
chose the environment
Mm.
that will allow me to grow and
Right.
train and still try somehow contribute.
Mm.
Now I wanted to choose the industry
Right.
that I like
Mhm.
and that I know. So,
Mhm.
so now I'm in the contribution mode.
Right.
From, obviously from day one, I need
Mhm.
to, because I'm not going to walk in there saying I'd like to be trained.
Mhm.
So I chose D&M,
Mhm.
audio, high-end audio manufacturer,
Mhm.
back to the B2C part, which
Mhm.
I started with American Express,
Mhm.
but also manufacturing, which I later
Mm.
got. Nice combination. I like audio myself. I was an audiophile when I was younger. Had all these,
Expensive equipment.
or I wanted to buy those equipments. One of them, which was D&M's Marantz.
Mhm.
So
That's a famous brand, Marantz, isn't it?
yes,
Mm.
and we also had Macintosh, which is way up there. It was beyond my reach, but. So Denon, Marantz, Macintosh, and then that company actually had 10 brands at the time.
Mm.
The private equity fund that purchased Denon from Nippon Columbia then took the roll-up strategy, so bought all these other audio manufacturers,
Mhm.
made it into this company with lots of brands, consumer and business,
Mhm.
for studios, broadcasters, DJ.
Mhm.
Then Lehman shock hit,
Right.
and you don't need high-end audio to
No.
live. So yeah, we took a big hit.
Mm.
So we had to restructure. That's right after restructuring is when I joined.
Just on that though, I mean, part of the irony of Lehman shock was that a lot of furniture sales, home DIY type of activities, things like entertainment centres inside. We saw that with COVID, that people sort of went home and started working on stuff there. But with Lehman, it was like we're losing our jobs, we're losing business. There was no flower that came out of that, like with COVID, and for some industries, that was pretty much everyone got slammed.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So yeah, everyone got slammed, but those kind of products or services that were not a necessity
Mm.
in people's lives,
Mm.
more of luxuries,
Mm.
they got hit hard.
Mm.
So yeah, so we were one of those, and so we had to kind of rebuild the business after getting that hit. But yeah, it was very interesting getting back to the B2C part, where B2B is a lot more logical.
Yeah.
You understand your business model and you try to find your strengths and go after the competitors in a certain field with pricing and services and. But then B2C has this other part, which even if your product is not that great, if the design's great, it sells, or if you have that right flair to it, it sells. And
It's called marketing.
yeah. So the combination of that was very interesting. So I enjoyed that, but it was quickly sold again by the private equity fund. They brought in American management team. Although this was a Japanese company, they brought in American to run the company, and of course the American then moved the headquarters to the U.S. It was kind of rare to see somebody who was a very, very competitive and skilled manager, but only had one experience. I mean, he was in his late 40s and only worked with one company. It's kind of rare, right? In the U.S.
These days, yes. U.S. particularly.
In the U.S. particularly. So that was his first move. And like my first move, I think he had a lot of difficulties trying to understand what skills he can use and what he can't and what he can
Well,
apply.
not only that, he's dealing with Japan.
In Japan, yes.
You know, like you can move the headquarters to America, but you still got the business here. run
And
by
all the
Japanese.
engineers were here.
And all the, yeah,
And-
that must have been.
It was very difficult. I can see him having lots of difficulties trying to make things move, trying to, make changes for the good of the company, of course. But, as you know, many Japanese have a very high aversion to changes. And especially when you go tell them up front, this way of doing things is not right. You have to speak up. Or the Japanese culture of not challenging status quo is not right. When you start saying it's not right, you quickly make people your enemy, and the Japanese.
Well, it's an insult.
It's an insult, yeah.
Yeah, this is our, hey, by the way, we had a company before you turned up. You guys actually created the Lehman shock, not us, too, by the way. And now we're stuck with you. I mean, that's an insult, isn't it, really, from their point of view?
Right.
It's like, hang on a minute.
So first he
don't
was
know
trying to change
Yeah.
by discussions, but then he quickly found out that it wasn't working. So then he started to say, every time he does a town hall, he would say one or two things about how this is not right. The Japanese way or understanding or thinking is not right, so you got to change. Obviously, that alienated a lot of people,
Would've,
and then of course he brought in a bunch of Americans. Not to say something wrong with them, but there was actually one or two people that was very, very skilled in global management. I respected them as my colleagues, but then you had a couple who thought, if this works in Hong Kong, why doesn't it work in Japan? Type of attitude.
Yeah.
And of course that doesn't work here.
I've been down that track myself with little bosses in the past, and it always ends in a train wreck,
Right. So that's when I started to think, well, what would I be doing differently if I was in that CEO's shoes? Very complex organization, global, the North America, they got Asia, they got Europe, all these Japanese engineers who stick on this, high-end audio is a good thing, but the entire audio industry is moving on to mobile audio. No more high-end audio where you got to sit in front of speakers and listen for like hours, not moving. Now people want to hear or listen to music wherever they are.
And they're listening through very
Very
cheap,
different, yes.
relatively cheap devices which are plugged into their ears compared to a massive big stereo.
Right. So,
Yeah, so the
very
quality's
different,
totally
very different environment. But so definitely the CEO was right. We need to change. We need to change our products. We need to change how they're being sold and understand where the future of the market is. But these engineers didn't want to change. So yeah. So I started thinking about that, and I said, oh, okay. I think I'm now ready to be a CEO. And but I didn't know when that opportunity was going to come. So this was one of the first time. By the way, every time I change jobs, I usually quit first and then go find jobs.
Okay.
I didn't want to disrupt by
Right.
just moving.
Right.
So I wanted to say, okay, I'm leaving. Tell me what you need me to do before I leave, and I'll just do all that because I don't have to be somewhere by a certain date. But that kind of killed me financially. So
I was going to say that's a very bold way of doing things.
so this time I said, I don't know when I'm going to get a job, or I don't even know if I'm going to get a job as a CEO. So I'll kind of look on the sideline. And I got my first CEO job in a semiconductor company, Nihon Intern Electronics. So I moved there.
And this is what year are we talking about now?
2013.
Okay, all right. And so how long are you there in this company?
I was there for 4 years. This was owned by a quasi-government fund, private equity fund, that wanted to do something to strengthen the semiconductor industry in Japan. I turned it around, and then this company called Kyocera, which is one of the large,
Kyocera, a huge company.
a huge company, got interested, and they bought the company.
Right.
So I kind of lost my job.
They put their own
But
Kyocera
they
guy
wanted-
in
yeah.
the
So,
seat, yeah.
but they wanted me to stick around doing their M&A, leading their M&A department, and I thought I should stick around because I told the employees it's a good thing for Kyocera to buy us, but I can't say it. But it's a
And
good thing, but I'm leaving.
Yeah, it was a great idea, and I'll see you guys later. Yeah.
So I said, that doesn't sound right. So I said, yeah, I'll be around. I'll be in Kyoto, in the headquarters. So, you know, if anything, you guys can just, you know, reach out for me anytime. I'll be around. So I did. Stuck around for a year. And then went on to my second, which was my goal, which if I'm going to be a professional manager, I wanted to be a CEO of a Tokyo Stock, well now it's different, but Tokyo Stock Exchange Section 1 company, the Ichibu Jojo company. So ARRK was one of those.
What does ARRK do?
They do prototypes. It's an entirely different way of manufacturing I did not know about.
It's like 3D printing and that type of thing?
They do 3D printing, but they also do clay models for automobile manufacturers. They do engineering with like 1,000 engineers in Germany that just does engineering, you know, day and night. So the output that the customer pays millions of dollars for is data. Yeah, like you should change, you know, your design of your hood this way because otherwise, for women and weighing from 100 to 130 pounds, between a height of 5 foot to 5 foot 4 inches, are not going to be thrown up as the auto manufacturer want to. They're going to be pushed over. They're going to be flown away, which then they could be hit critically. But if you pull that person up when you hit them, they'll roll over, and they can still manage to live or have a lot less injury.
So safety factor.
Safety factor.
Through the design makes a difference.
You got to do the design, understand the angle, understand the material, the thickness of it, and all that stuff is put in and then simulated for days to say, okay, it works for this, but it doesn't work for them.
Wow, okay. So you're CEO there now, right? So this is the position that you're looking for. What were some of the challenges of being a new CEO in that company in terms of you've got existing team members, existing division heads, you come in from outside again, again. So what did you find the most challenging?
Well, first of all, I was interested in that job because it was one of the last things I wanted to experience, which was scale, large scale.
Right.
So they had about 3,800 employees worldwide, and not this kind of scale where you say, "Oh, I got 1,500 people working in a Chinese factory," where they keep changing, you know, every couple of years.
Yeah.
Well, this is all full-time people that all want careers. College grads, some doctors there. So this was the first time I actually managing, I'm managing a company where I don't know all the faces, I don't know the names, I don't even, again, don't speak the language, I don't speak German, I don't speak French, I learned a little bit, but and all these other countries and the values, and we had 4 different businesses, prototyping, molding, actual manufacturing, small scale, etc. So that was very, very complex, very different, but the biggest challenge being the company grew by M&A, through M&A. They just kept buying and buying and buying, and over 7 years, I had like 120 subsidiaries.
Wow.
When their top line was about $4 billion, then they just totally started to lose money because they just kept buying too many companies without doing any of the post M&A,
integration, which is a critical part of the whole thing, right?
Which is norm, but they didn't do any PMI.
Wow.
All the 120 companies they purchased, so they kind of all ran all different directions and wasn't functioning. So they lost money, but they had too many Japanese large companies, too small manufacturers in their service. So the government could not let ARRK go down, go belly up.
Oh.
It would
okay.
have too much repercussions in the big companies,
Okay.
including the automotive companies. So the government fund again saved this company, helped it sort of shrink down to about 20 subsidiaries and about a $500 million size,
All right.
and then sold it to private equity fund,
All right.
who hired then me to run the company.
So you came in
I came
on
in
the tail end of all this,
after the whole
this complete.
downsizing was
Yeah.
completed, and then it was supposed to be growth, but then missed 2 years of growth targets because they didn't have strategy.
Wow.
Same situation. We needed a
Yep.
new strategy,
Yep.
but very different scenario.
So I guess that's a tougher situation. Is that they're losing size, scale. You know, can't swallow 120 subsidiaries so easily. And so, in terms of that company, you were there for how long?
Just 3 years, because
3 years.
this time, at least the last company, I was there, I made my changes, it showed in the results and the financials, and Kyocera looked at it and bought it. This time, it was since it was a public company, we did the general shareholders meeting in June, and then in August, I was told, oh, we're selling the company. Now to Mitsui Chemicals.
Oh.
So, oh, okay, so, well, we'd like you to stay. Well, yeah, I'd like to do something. I just came here.
Just arrived. Yeah.
So yeah, I stayed. But after my second year, they were asking me to push. They pushed me to do the mergers. You know, go for the two business. You know, in typical M&A, you say 1 + 1 can't be 2. It has to be 3
Yeah.
because
Oh, okay.
those two kind of help each other out.
Yeah. The synergy.
The synergy, yeah, that's the
Yeah.
word I was looking for.
Synergy.
So, we need synergy.
Mhm.
But from the onset of the M&A, I said, why did you buy us? Because they're
Yeah.
they're a material company,
Yeah, exactly,
they
yeah.
make plastics.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, well, because you guys are at the very, very early stage of their clients' product development stage.
Ah.
Because they wanted to get into automotive heavily. They positioned it as, like many other companies, as the strategic industry. Typically, automotive companies' new product cycle, as the consumer see it, is once every 3-4 years, new model comes out. But it actually starts like 7 years before it comes into the market,
The planning. Yeah.
the planning. And
Design.
that's when we are involved
Right.
at ARRK, because we do all these,
Right. So this is like an early warning for
very,
Mitsui.
very, very early.
They can get into be designing for their components as well.
Exactly. So they
Nice.
thought that if they go through us,
Strategic.
they can be the supplier for their new models that's going to come out years later by getting the design in. But the customers weren't that interested in the materials. They're much more interested in the functions and the design and where to sell it and how to sell it. And material comes last. So so yeah, I said okay, I'll let you guys run it. I'm off.
Yeah.
So I stuck around for another year as an advisor in case you guys need me. I'm around, but my honest opinion, so I became what I wanted to. President and CEO of a listed company. 4,000 people may not be that big, but it was big enough for me.
Big enough.
It's a big enough company. I did the scale. I did many industries. I did service. I did Japanese. I did American. So what next? I didn't really enjoy, because I was kind of, the company got sold quite early stage before I got to do anything with the company. I could have tried again, but I could maybe run into another company, being the CEO and a private equity fund, sells it much earlier than they thought they will, and then become another one of the 50, 100 subsidiaries for $20 billion company. It's not really what I'm looking for. Probably my last few years in my career, I want to do something that I can be proud of. It's all the different industries I experience, all the different kinds of things that I experience culturally as well. I think I'm one of the very few truly global management people that understands, working with the American-minded people, Western as well as the Japanese. I want to do something that I can kind of pay back to society. And I didn't know what that was, so I kind of waited and got different opportunities presented to me, but more of the same type.
Which tends to be the case. People put you on a slot. Okay.
Yes.
He's the manufacturing turnaround guy.
Turnaround guy.
Yeah. Put him over here in this pigeonhole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then this enworld opportunity came. I said, "Oh, this is the kind of thing I was kind of looking for."
People, business, service business. Yeah.
But what got me interested, I never thought I would be in the recruiting industry, but people business. But the way it was pitched to me was, well, this company specializes in global talent. Okay, global talent. That's one thing the major Japanese companies are always in short of.
Absolutely.
Short supply of. I can contribute that way. Then they said the second thing unique about this company is they have this mission called enabling success, where most companies in our industry, when you place somebody, that's where your job's over. You're done, successful placement, you get your fees. Okay, move on. This company is different because they say, okay, our job doesn't end there. That person that we place needs to succeed. And so we're going to keep following up for another year and see if that person succeeded or not. If that person fails or starts to get really, really difficult, we're going to step in and we're going to try to help out. We're going to talk with the client, say, well, what's going wrong? How can we help? Your expectations are different. He or she is thinking it this way. Your expectation is over here. So let's get it aligned. All these things that can help that person succeed. That's where we think our jobs are, because so that in the ultimate way is every time we place somebody, if that person doesn't move, that's great. Actually, that's kind of digging your own grave in our industry, because the more the people move, the more opportunities we get. But I like that idea. I said, that's a great idea. I never heard of that from an agent.
No.
So I said, there I can be proud of running that company, saying.
So how do you take over? You come in, you're succeeding Vijay, who's also been on this podcast previously as the president of enworld, who's always been in recruiting, from my memory, in his career basically, and you've got a very, very broad spectrum, of experiences, and you come into this company. You've got about 300 something people here. It's a large enterprise in that sense, and. So, you come in from outside, you've got a broad spectrum of great experiences, and you know a lot about different industries, but not necessarily in the recruiting industry. So you come in from outside. In that sense, they don't see a background on your part there. How do you get them to follow you when they've been in this business for much longer?
So, especially in this industry, I found out after I joined that most people running companies in this industry is from the industry. Very rare that people like myself come from other industries and become in a president or CEO position. So I think the initial reaction of the employees, including the senior management team, was not possible. How can this guy run a company when he doesn't know anything about recruiting? That's what I heard after I joined. Kind of expected that. Wherever I go, there's some degree to that. So, like what everyone else does, I listen to them, do one-on-ones. And actually, in this company, because it's about people, I've done a bit more than just one-on-ones. I took them out to dinners.
Oh, okay.
A lot of them. So
This is one at a time or in groups?
one at a time for the directors and above, and then in teams of 2 or 3 for everyone else. So did that for more than 50 people. So yeah, I had lots of dinners.
Yeah.
But I think it was worth it because you know, dinner is a very different set, you know, atmosphere, and
sitting in the boardroom having a conversation about what you think is
their
supposed
tents and you know, so I found out what they thought was or what they feared was going to change, and you know, their anxiety, where it's coming from, and so that's a different step I took this time around. But the senior was quite similar to all the other companies that have been around. You know, what they're not doing, what they're doing too much of. So those I could pretty much get into. But this time I took a rather different approach of actually involving a lot of the people in getting to that stage of which we just announced a couple of weeks ago. On this new project of saying, okay, this is an objective look at our company, where we stand today, what we do well and what we don't do well, and all these. My intention was to show the people that, you know, there's a different way of managing, and without meaning to, without the intention of saying something that is not meant to be a derogatory comment to all the management people within the industry. I think a lot of the people tend to focus a lot on the sales side of the business because they have a lot of sales experience. But like in any business, in any company, operations are very important. How you run the business processes to hold a good productivity is very important. Developing a strategy is very important. To not just saying that you're different, but to how do you actually make yourself different, and how
sustain that too.
And how do you uphold your value proposition with the business processes that actually support that value proposition. The business processes that are actually different from your competitors, which the customers do not see, but they need to feel it when they deal with us. So that thing about enabling success, or how we say we're specializing in global talent. Oh, really? Well, what do you do differently than people who don't say they're specializing in global talent? We're not going to say everything, but we need something different, and all that. And the people understood that, and we got the feedback, and they all understood what I communicated. So it was a good start, but taking a lot more care in how I delivered that message was very different and important too.
And if you were going to give some advice to someone who's being sent out to Japan, okay, go to Japan, run our organization, they don't know Japan, they don't speak Japanese, what would be some advice you'd give them?
It's not going to relate much to this company per se, but in general, if you're working with the Japanese population, Japanese workers here, the biggest difference, I think, is coming from the emphasis on harmony, balance, which could be great in many times, but it also can make being ambiguous the right thing.
Now that's an interesting statement. Being ambiguous the right thing, which from a Western business concept is this usually thought to be untenable. You have to be certain and clear and specific and no hesitation, as opposed to a definite maybe.
And there are many Japanese words for that, and it's done in the politics stage. It's done in communities. It's done everywhere. You look for intermediate solutions. You look for vague or arbitrary or ambiguity is tolerated because maintaining harmony and balance is more important. And while respecting that emphasis on maintaining harmony and balance, which I think the foreigners, particularly the Western foreigners coming into Japan, will find a little bit difficult
Mm-hmm.
to take.
Mm-hmm.
I think while respecting that, you need to be clear where ambiguity is not going to be tolerated, and it's not in the interest of the company.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing that I really think the newcomers should understand.
Mm-hmm. What else?
The second thing is Japanese, especially the education they receive, both in school and outside of school, especially when you're in a large corporation, is based on subtraction.
Mm-hmm.
The whole career is based on subtraction,
Mm-hmm.
the gentenho.
Mm-hmm.
So you have 100 points,
Mm-hmm.
and every time you make a mistake, you get subtracted.
Mm-hmm.
That's why people are so averse of making mistakes and trying new things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's very important to let them know that that's one way of thinking, but it's also another way of thinking that you start from 0 instead of 100.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you make mistakes, 0 is 0.
Mm-hmm.
And the more new things and additions that you do, you get plus and you get positive points, moving up to 100, not starting from 100.
Mm-hmm. It's such a different perspective, isn't it?
Yes, very different.
Yeah.
And
That's a maintain as opposed to a grow.
and try new things and
Perspectives.
being innovative
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and making mistakes. But it's easy to say that, but people are still going to say, yeah, but if we make mistakes, you're still going to penalize us, right? You know, you're going to demote me or you're going to give me no pay increase or something. So I think it's very important to have a system there that actually does not penalize people that make mistakes, particularly in the financial side. So that people know that they actually can make mistakes and don't get penalized for that. Because it's not just your boss saying it, there's a mechanism in the company that allows that.
Right. Because the HR department may have a different view on that. You don't run into that problem.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So what other advice would you have for them?
Well, let's see. The other thing is Japanese people in general, and not just in corporations, they tend to be followers and not lead. And they have, traditionally, they listen to what they call the okami, or, up there. It could be the government, it could be the management. But in many cases, like everybody else, if the okami is not doing the right thing, they complain, but they never voice it, right? Again, part of this harmony thing. Don't rock the boat. But if you're dissatisfied, you're dissatisfied. So they go to Shimbashi, have a little yakitori and drink a little sake.
Complain about the boss, right?
Just complain and go home.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important to say, challenging status quo, challenging managers is allowed and it's okay and it's actually healthy. And particularly for people in the management level, not challenging or not saying that things are not right is actually you're abandoning your responsibility. Because the management philosophy that I always entail, and I did that in this company too, is you have to do the right thing. And people know generally what the right thing is. It's usually when the circumstances make doing the right thing very inconvenient for you, it's when you turn your face away from or you blink. And people generally know when they're not doing the right thing. So it's very important when you try to do it or make a decision or when you see that happening within the organization to speak up and say it's not the right thing that's going on. So we need to challenge that.
That's a difficult one, isn't it? Because as you say, that on one perspective is we keep the harmony, but now we've got to challenge the harmony by having a different viewpoint or bring in a different insight or a different perspective so we have a better result. That balance is not so easy.
No, it's not. And I don't have any problem here because people challenge me all the time, so it's okay. But in Japanese, typical Japanese companies, particularly manufacturing companies, people do not challenge you. So I bring about one of my colleagues from before, one or two of them. One of their job is to challenge me in board meetings or in management meetings so that people see that it's okay to challenge and that I don't get upset or I don't shut that person down. And say, okay.
It's tolerated.
What about you? And and I go around asking and people feel comfortable that because that guy keeps challenging what I say, that it's okay. And they need to see that.
Yeah, well, that's the seeing is believing for that,
Yes.
isn't it? Because what you have is like, okay, well, yes, 100 flowers bloom and, 1,000 schools contend, and then someone disagrees and they get just crushed.
Yes.
That's the end of that.
Yes.
Yeah. So, what would be your definition of leadership?
I think leadership, there are a number of things there, but first of all, it's solving problems and helping others succeed. That's one aspect. The second piece is you need to be strategic and operational at the same time. There are very skilled people doing either of those, but not that many people can handle both of those. And that's why very few people become good leaders or take leadership positions. Not easy to see, but holding integrity is absolute must, because people generally do see you. They know what you do and what you say, even if they're not there. So that's very important. And finally, being very effective and open communicator is also important. And what that means is sometimes how you deliver the message is equally as important as the message itself. When you do that, all those things put together, I think, is in my mind, what constitutes good leadership.
Well, thank you very much. You've given a lot of your time today. I appreciate that. And enjoyed. It was very fascinating, actually, going through the multiple stages in your journey of different organisations and challenges that you face. So it was really a very rich harvest of good leadership information today and knowledge. So thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you for having me.
Join us again for our next episode of Japan's top business interviews.